Hello and welcome back to Devlog. It is me, Twilight Sparkle, the special guest host of this episode. In this Devlog, Twilight, you gotta help me, the aliens are attacking. Oh no, that's terrible, what can I do? You gotta come with me on my spaceship and we gotta save the world, Twilight Sparkle. Okay, I'm coming right now, let's go. And welcome back to Devlog. In the last part I worked on, and in this part I work on the new Flying Factory level and all of the additions to the game that come with the Flying Factory level. The Flying Factory level by design and also in where it comes in the game, being the furthest level so far, is one of the more difficult levels. One of the reasons for this is because the Flying Factory by design is going to have a lot of different mechanics involved in the Flying Factory, and also a lot of the levels are made to be more precise and more puzzle based in what you do. So because of this, a lot of the difficulty in the level is actually figuring out what you are supposed to do in the level. But the Flying Factory is another level that has a very unique sort of gimmick to it. I think a lot of the levels in Pep-Pel are beginning to have this sort of gimmick. The first three levels are pretty standard levels, then after that there is the water level, there is the Flying Factory level which has its own gimmick that I will talk about, the Beast Brutality level which has a boss fight gimmick, and the final level which has another gimmick that I won't spoil, but it's pretty good. But the gimmick of the Flying Factory level is that there is no horizontal movement, the camera is fixed on one horizontal position, and the entire level is just going up and down vertically, and there is more of a puzzle focus to the levels in the Flying Factory. The different mechanics in the Flying Factory, which I have discussed in other devlogs, so you should watch this, is the moving platform, which is actually one of the very first objects and things I made for Pep-Pel and then proceeded to not use for many months because they were originally going to be the feature of the trash trail, and then that level got way too complicated, so I removed them and now I'm finally using them. The other mechanic is the laser mechanic, the runner ball mechanics, and the turning off and on block mechanics. These all combine together in a really nice way. They all have a lot of really nice interactivity. The runner balls can block things for the moving platforms. The moving platforms can block lasers or turn off lasers by slamming into them. The on-off balls can be used to enable or disable balls, and by balls I mean blocks, that would in turn inconvenience moving objects or inconvenience lasers to make it so they can't move or work as correctly, and I really like this design a whole lot in the Flying Factory. I feel like in previous levels, the mechanic and gimmick of those levels have worked very well together. For example, the rope lines and the ropes in the Trash Trail level work very well together because they are both momentum based and they both have a very similar visual style. The actual flooring of the Desert's Desert works pretty well together because they're just different floor informations and it reads very well for the player. But the Flying Factory has 4 mechanics and each of these are very unique to each other, I believe. So the fact that I was able to design these 4 different mechanics that all have interactivity with each other is what I think a very nice feature of the Flying Factory level. One mechanic I originally wanted to add for the Flying Factory is the wind mechanic, which, if you watch old Pep-Pel devlogs, I already discussed at length, but this would essentially be a mechanic where wind blows a character. This ended up being way too complicated and not the focus of the Flying Factory. The Flying Factory became more puzzle focused. Wind did not really have a usage in the Flying Factory. There wasn't any section or level design that I felt like could be complicated or made more fun or more interesting with the wind mechanic. It simply would have made the level too complicated in an uninteresting way, so I decided to remove it from the Flying Factory level. However, since Pep-Pel has hard mode stages, wind could be reintroduced in the hard mode version of the Flying Factory, which will be horizontal instead of vertical, and I feel like that could maybe add some more difficulty to the Flying Factory or be more interesting to navigate with. Or maybe it won't, and I will just remove the mechanic entirely and only include it in the debug stage where you can see all of the mechanics. I find the ability to just make a mechanic for Pep-Pel and never use it pretty freeing. I think in designs for games it is simple to make a mechanic and think that it has to be used because the mechanic is made, but you should make something and then destroy it. I assure you it is quite liberating and also fun. but the wind mechanic, as it stands, probably won't be used very much in the base game, if at all. Next we have the design for the levels themselves, these being the actual visuals. Normally I use a sprite shape system for Pep-Pel's levels to give them more of an organic and curved surface shape, but you may be able to tell that I in fact drew a sprite sheet? I drew a sprite sheet for the trash trail, the flying factory level, which is the one we're looking at right now, and uses this instead of the regular sprite shape system. The reasoning for this was a few different reasons. The first being I wanted a visual that would not be easily implemented with the sprite shape system. The second being that I wanted a less organic look to the flying factory level, this being it being more mechanical and blocky, so a sprite shape system would not really work for this. The third being that the levels have to be in square block shapes for the verticality and also design of the flying factory to make sense. And also I want to try using tile maps. I tried to make actual tiles that could be used for curves and sections where Pep-Pel can run on the wall, because that's the whole point of Pep-Pel, baby. You can run on walls. That's the whole draw of the game. But I am fine if this one level of Pep-Pel does not use this feature of Pep-Pel, being that you can run on curved surfaces very often, because the whole point of the flying factory is you're descending down it, so there's not a lot of opportunities to really run on walls anyway, and the whole point of the flying factory is more the mechanics and not the level surfaces. So for this one level I am fine that it is more blocky, even though I don't like it very much, visually speaking. Between you and me, I don't like it very much visually speaking, but I'm okay with it. Finally, I have the actual testing of the flying factory. Oh no, the game too hard, making me sad. The actual flying factory level was surprisingly a lot easy to test for, maybe because I didn't use sprite shapes when designing the actual level surfaces and I used more blocky shapes, and there wasn't as many opportunities for hitboxes to be incorrect, or at least not as egregiously so as in other levels. There are still some hitbox errors I encountered when testing, as you can probably see in the video of that one section where the moving object goes inside a wall. That wasn't very good, was it? That was a big oopsie by me. But mostly the hitbox testing for the flying factory level compared to other levels has been very, very easy. I actually made and blocked out a lot of the levels before even testing any of them, which I usually do not do. I usually make a chunk, test that, make another chunk, so on and so forth. But for the flying factory level, I sort of did a lot of the level in one go, and then changed and added things as I went. And by as I went, I mean at the end of making the level, and then I just changed a couple things. Luckily, there was no issue with the heighting of the level designs, because if there was an issue with the heighting, I would have to change oh so much. And it was mostly just hitbox errors or sizings of platforms that had to be changed, and for the most part, the Flying Factory level had a pretty easy to test level. The reason I bring this up is because there was one aspect of the Flying Factory that was difficult to test. This being that the Flying Factory is really, really difficult. Maybe too difficult. Or maybe, just maybe, it's so difficult that it's funny. A lot of the sections of the Flying Factory I found to be quite difficult, quite hard to time, and overall bad. The bad ones I fixed. The really difficult ones, I feel like I may keep, but this could be an issue for future testing of Pep-Pel, because there has definitely been some level areas in other levels I have initially found to be very, very difficult, and then upon replaying the level found to be easier or difficult in a way that has been enjoyable. So maybe this is just something I leave for now in the Trash Trail Flying Factory, not Trash Trail, ignore me, in the Flying Factory level until future testing. Which section do you think is the hardest one? Can you tell by watching this video? Is it the section I spent 5 minutes trying to beat and then did not? I'll never tell. And that is it for Devlog. In the next part I will be talking about the actual visual design for the Flying Factory, this being the visuals of the Flying Factory, which I quite enjoy. I say this with every single level I have made and drawn, but Every single time I had the visuals made and the actual level made, I am incredibly proud of how they look and how they play. I think the visuals for the Flying Factory are really cool looking. I think they look really neat, they look very pretty, they look cool. I'm glad I made it. The Flying Factory is definitely the level that I will be probably using the most in screenshots of Pep-Pel to advertise the game. That and the Trash Trail, because those two levels are, I believe, the best visual looking levels in Pep-Pel, at least for a unwise viewer who does not know nothing about Pep-Pellington.